thank you very much for having me here. I want to say Makoma is actually a pipeline of nanotechnologies to America. They bring nanotechnologies here to this market. Speaking about photocatalytic coatings, I would not call it a product because this is really a technology. It's a system how to purify air, how to protect our wealth, how to protect our buildings, and how to clean the environment. So it is not really a product, it's a technology. The technology brings many new things. So yes, application is like a product. You paint it over the final paint, and you create a very thin layer, so about 10 times thinner than the paint coat, and it protects the paint coat underneath. So the paint from resin is suddenly protected by a thin layer of titanium dioxide special coating, which absorbs all the UV, gets hot, so to speak, gets a oxidative potential at 3.2 electron volts. I don't want to bother you with the technical details, but it's more than on chlorine. It's more than on ozone, and if we express it as a temperature, it would be like 30,000 degrees C, which is higher temperature than on a sun. Yeah. So anything burns on it when it's properly illuminated. So when a daylight shines on the coating, it is active. Any molecule that will actually touch it will lose an electron between the bonds. So it steals the electron because it's electron deficient surface, titanium dioxide, and steals the electron, opens the bond, and oxygen, which is ever present, will just bind to the ends, and this is actually burning. It's like burning at a room temperature and a complete mineralization. So from toxic compounds like benzopyrene, which is highly carcinogenic, it's a monitored compound. You create a harmless molecules of water and CO2. So this is, so to speak, when we express this as an offset, there is a Canadian proposal, and they suggest that removing 1 ton of benzopyrene of the environment should actually compensate like for 32,000 tons of CO2. Wow. So that's a nice offset and represent about $4 million for it. Sure. Now, any of these large casinos, if they were painted, they would do this job for people. Okay. Yeah. We have about 90,000 hospitals in the United States, and we also have about 90,000 deaths coming from hospital-acquired infection. Using FN coating is a natural, higher level standard. There are two major benefits for the hospitals. One is increasing the hygienic cleanness of the environment, so it's more sanitary, less bacteria. You will never find bacteria on the coating, so the walls will always be clean. But there is also a side effect which removes the vapors of disinfection agents. So you need to use strong disinfection agents, which are all a little bit poisonous and mostly carcinogenic. And you want to sterilize, say, a table. So you just wipe it up, and but as soon as it evaporates, the disinfection agent is gone, doesn't do anything but circulating in the air. And our photocatalytic coating will remove those molecules. They will break them in the same manner like we described before. So you can get rid of two problems. One is with bacteria. Sometimes they are mutating, so they get more resistant. So in the case of photocatalysis, it's like a hot plate, so they are not able to mutate and adjust to it, so they just burn. They just survive or burn. So depending on the intensity of light, so you need some light to be present. It has to, yes, it takes 420 nanometers and down, so deep purple and lower. UV is preferred. The peak is at 365 nanometers. So it's many insects see in this spectra, people don't. In matter of fact, we have a product for almost any material except for glass. We don't want to do glass surfaces, but anything else is fine. It breaks the smelly molecules apart, and so that's the way how the smell disappears. Here we provide 10 years warranty for the exterior, and the expectancy life is about 30 years. And inside there is actually no limitation. The function will always be there, but we recommend to spray over a new layer or so every 7 years or so. The coating is slightly hydrophilic, so it has a repelling effect to those sprays which normally contain solvents which are hydrophobic, like toluene and xylenes. So the spray doesn't penetrate deep inside the layer. So you need more than 3 layers, which we normally use for regular stuff. But if you double the thickness, the spray will not go through. So then you can spray it, scrape it off, or it will vanish after a while. The technology can cool off the city. It was found by Makoma. We sort of suspected it's white, so it should reflect the radiation, heat radiation a little bit. But we thought not more than a regular white paint. But in fact, you can double the effect. So there can be easily 20% even more different in temperature on painted and coated and uncoated surfaces. So this is a great finding, and if implemented in a large scale in places like Vegas, you can get rid of a lot of heat, which will be reflected with the speed of light back to the universe, and would compensate for all the infrastructure, like black roads, which consume all the light spectra and turn it into heat. So this is a really very sophisticated way how to keep our cities comfortable, how to cool them down, clean environment at the same time. So if you imagine that every 150 square feet will compensate for 3 gasoline cars, the emissions, then this is definitely worth, of considering. Every individual has to drive to work, right? There is no way, to avoid cars today. On the other hand, you can remove the emissions which you actually generated, your car have generated. You can remove them of the environment. So using FN coating technology, you get the cooling effect, so you cool down the environment a little bit, spend less money on energy because a lot of the heat is gone. Second part is you clean the air from the environment, and you get the economical effect, which is very important for poorly accessible surfaces, for tall buildings which are hard to maintain or do pressure washing or something. This is actually great because the self-cleaning properties of this coating will keep it clean, will maintain the surface. So let's call it a maintenance-free surface, and that's definitely a large economical benefit. There are some limitations. We don't like dark colors; they consume too much light. But we have about 400 different undertones in a pastel scale, a pastel spectra. And we also have a transparent version which goes onto natural materials and surfaces.